I feel like people are going away from using, especially for serious business use cases, OpenAI's models. People are probably more leaning towards.
Kyle's the founder and CEO of Avian.io, and Avian's a natural language platform that lets you mix data sources and chat with them in real time. So it's like having a personal assistant who organizes all of your data, answers all of your data related questions, and combines data from different sources. It's sort of like a Google Sheets on steroids. And Avian has access to over 20 different platforms, including Google Ads, Google Analytics, Facebook ads, and yeah, lets you analyze all of your business data in one place in real time. So we could start with the AI market in general. Obviously, a lot has happened over the past year. What are some key trends that you see emerging in the AI analytics space, and how would you say Avian is adapting to those trends?
Yeah, there's a lot of trends, and I feel like the biggest trend that I've seen is companies who raised money before, like in 2019, 2020, pivoting to doing an AI startup. So a lot of our competitors are doing that. They kind of didn't set up from the onset to be an AI company. Maybe they were doing something else, then they realized, okay, well, this is going to be a hot space. Let's try this out. I think the other trends are related to like models and which models people are using. I feel like people are going away from using, especially for serious business use cases, OpenAI's models. People are probably more leaning towards like Llama, hosted on Azure, fine-tuned, because you can do all the RLHF stuff, especially for the serious business use cases. So we use some methodology similar to that. Those are the broad trends that I would say that we're kind of looking at. A lot of products, like a lot of different products that are just wrappers around GPT as well. And I guess some of them are good, but I still think broadly the software layer, the deterministic software layer around the AI that uses the wrapper is still more important than just the wrapper itself.
Okay, so would you say then that like the companies are trying to build their own data sets to so they have something that distinguishes them from just being a wrapper on, like you said,
Yeah,
ChatGPT?
correct. So like we have some proprietary data sets from a previous company that I did that was actually a big data in e-commerce company. And a lot of our kind of marketing connectors are trained on that specifically. And also we create our own schemas, right? And we train each of these LLMs on each schema that we actually use. So there's a lot of things that can be done to improve the process and outputs, but the proprietary data sets, I think, as you said, are probably one of the biggest things.
So is a schema is sort of like a typical use case that your bot can use to sort of like improve the output for a particular user where you have a bunch of users who are doing a similar sort of task? Is
Yeah,
that, would
yeah,
that be
the
right?
schema is the most important thing, right? Because for Google Analytics, you mainly have like a standard schema, right? But then you have custom conversions on top of that. So we train on the standard schema, but the schema, it's weird to think about it like a database schema because it's actually a conglomeration of like a bunch of different APIs. Say there's like 10 APIs on Google Analytics that are like relevant to pulling the correct data. We'll stitch them together, put it all in a schema, and then the AI will learn what it can query with what and what it can't query. And there's a lot of different possibilities of metrics and dimensions, right? So that's what we're kind of doing. And then kind of on the other side, we add the custom conversions on top. So the AI isn't trained on them, but it can see the custom conversions and query them.
Okay, so would that mean that it looked like Avian is really geared towards like marketing use cases, like you have the Google ads and LinkedIn ads and
Yeah.
Facebook ads use cases. Would those be the most common sort of use cases that you're optimized for?
Yeah, we do have, of course, LinkedIn ads, as well as Microsoft ads, and we do, of course, offer like BigQuery as well. But mainly, it's going to be Google ads, Facebook ads. Google Analytics are the most popular ones. And of course, if you look at the yearly ad spend that people are like giving to Meta and Google and other companies, it's like $1 trillion per year in total. So it's a huge market, and it's also a very broad market. And it's kind of where the money is. It's a good place to start instead of like training. And I know this is what some of our other competitors are doing. The attempt is to like train your LLM on a customer's database or BigQuery so it can understand the schema and then produce SQL queries. And we've seen that kind of model fall flat, to say the least, in recent times. So that's really the distinction.
Okay. So what would be an example of insight that a customer who say is running a bunch of Google ads or Facebook ads, and obviously they're going to be trying to improve their performance. Like what would be a typical sort of insight that you might be able to get them that would let them improve the performance of their ads?
Yeah, something that you can ask is it to dive into stuff like mobile versus like desktop. And we actually had a customer who I know about, a large supermarket in New Zealand. And essentially we're connected to them through one of our clients. The interesting thing is that they had some of the old iPhone models, and I think they figured out they were losing $5 million per year in revenue because the site wasn't optimized for the old iPhone models. And the thing with that was it was that the checkout button didn't actually appear on those models, but yet in New Zealand, like a bunch of people are actually using it. And they didn't have any visibility of that until they actually like dove into the data. That would be one of the big examples. Another thing that wouldn't be possible traditionally with Google Analytics that we allow is insights over a bunch of data sets. So let's say you're a dental practice, but you have a bunch of franchises, each with different websites, each with different data sources. What you could do is you can aggregate data from, let's say, 10, 20 Google Analytics accounts at once, see which one's performing best, or just get an overall idea of how your business is doing. Obviously, that's not something that you can do natively on Google Analytics. And typically to do that, you'd have to like load it into a BigQuery, do like 10, 20 data blends with like left joins, whereas we just do that like kind of out of the box with natural language. So the time saving there is like 99% or something. It's a big time saving.
So would the client there need to kind of like know what the right question is to ask, or would they be able to just say like, look at my data, find where I'm find where I can best allocate the resources? Which obviously that's what everyone would like to do, but I
Yeah,
imagine it's
you can
impossible.
do that, but I would say it's going to give you like a generic response. It's going to just take a look at the stuff. But if you give it at least some idea of what you want to look at, like it's a very basic query to say, hey, how is mobile performing versus desktop, or which mobile devices are performing the best? Then it can get you all the data that you kind of need.
Okay, so you have to have the some sense of how you want to break down the data, but it does the legwork, like you said, 100 times faster than if you had to go into all the tools
Correct.
and
Yeah, correct. Correct.
uh,
If you're a complete like data novice and you like don't even know what Google Analytics is, it probably isn't the tool for you, right? You probably wouldn't even be able to like set it up where you go through the OAuth process you might not understand. So there is some kind of level of knowledge and expertise required, but it's very little. I would say you could easily train your team to use it because it's quite intuitive. Um, I know there are a lot of people who just expect data analytics tools or BI tools to be, oh, I plug my data in and then it finds like this one insight straight away that's like you can save $10 million here. But but typically there is just a bit of legwork to be done before that.
right. Yeah, I could see like people might expect AI tools to be magic out of the box, but you need to I get maybe you have to have some sort of directional sense of what's wrong, or like what's broken that maybe your landing page isn't converting well enough, or that there's some issue with your traffic from New Zealand, but you don't know exactly what it is. And
Right.
it seems like if you can perhaps if you can sort of like point the AI in the right direction, it can um, it can then take it from there and find some.
And broadly, I think it's an interesting trend in AI in general. So like AI can write code now, but if you don't know which direction to point it in, and if you can't detect that the response that it's sent you is, completely rubbish or it's like really useful, if you can't detect the difference between that and you follow its direction all the time, it's not really going to be able to provide you the right insights. And I think that's one of the things where people say, oh, AI is going to take over the world. Well, it might do, but in its current state right now, it doesn't know what direction to go in. That's the issue, right? Even if you run the same program itself, it's just going to get stuck. You see that with, especially if it does like some really hard math problems on like Project Euler or something, it really struggles and it just cannot get itself out of a rut and it just gets stuck. So there's definitely a lot of improvements to be made in AI overall, like that.
So, I mean, do you think that in the next year or two, we might get AIs that have that kind of like reflect, like they're able to reflect on the results and distinguish, things that are gibberish from actual insights, or be able to sort of have those like higher level thought processes that people seem to want from their AIs?
Avian already has some of these checks and balances. So we have what we call a data verification model. So what we do with that is we look at the raw data and we look at the AI response, and then we kind of show our work. So within the raw data, we'll actually highlight the rows that the model got its response from, and that's an adversarial model. It's trained just to do that. And we've had a lot of success with that because we can double check what it is and then propagate the feedback via RLHF and say, okay, you got it wrong here or you hallucinated here. But as long as we double check it and we let the user kind of see that we show our work, we can prevent hallucinations as a preventative measure. I think getting the model to never hallucinate just from the responses that it generates on its own could be a difficult task, but I hope that it will advance so that the AI can kind of think for itself. I think you've seen just with the Gemini announcement here, Google has obviously announced Gemini, and it's exciting. But then on the other hand, it's like, they claim to be better than GPT-4 in all these different ways, but the model that's actually better than GPT-4 won't be available for a few months. And then I tried Bard just yesterday with the new rolled out like Gemini Pro, whatever, and it was still like the same old Bard, like giving like code that doesn't work. So it's interesting. I think it's very interesting. But we'll see where we kind of go in the future.
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting, and there's a bit of a arms race clearly, like between these different companies, and so you'd expect them. Certainly, they have enough resources; they should be able to make the tools much better, very quickly. So, if a business, say a business has a large amount of proprietary data that isn't in one of the platforms that Avian's connected to, maybe they have a whole bunch of emails and CSVs and Word documents. How would you think about them using a tool like Avian? Could they just sort of like dump all of their data, into Avian and then
You
expect
can upload
the
files. You can upload files to Avian. You can upload images. You can upload CSVs. You can upload PDFs. We just launched a new assistance feature actually. That basically it's called Analysts, and essentially you're able to like the use case broadly is that you can upload, let's say, a bunch of like PDFs about marketing studies of your clients and like docx's, and create like an analyst that understands your client use case, but also has access to their data sources, and then give them access to that. Been rolling that out to some of our like larger customers, and it's been very successful. So you're able to upload almost everything that you want. My admission, or what I will admit, is that of course it's not going to work as well on unstructured data that the LLM hasn't been trained on, right? So if you've got like some random CSV with some weird like field names in some weird encoding language, it's obviously not going to work as well as the clean schema of like GA4.
So with the analyst feature, would you recommend a business to sort of like, I could see they could break their data into chunks and then sort of like give analyst, like build an analyst for sort of like each type of data,
Each client, yeah, or
or
each type
something
of
like
data.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
So the possibilities are really endless. You can connect whichever data sources you want. So let's say here are the common use cases that I've seen people use it for. They'd either do like one analyst per client, and with that, they use it for a dual purpose, right? They give access to the client and they charge the client for it. Obviously, they have to purchase a commercial license, or they also use it internally for their team to understand what's going on with the client. So you've got that kind of double-edged sword with that. And then another thing that you can do is obviously set up like a Google Analytics 4 analyst or a Google Ads analyst. if that's what you want to do, and then provide all the contextual information, all the PDFs, case studies that you have about the GA4 website.
Okay. And so in the analyst feature, like besides just uploading their data, are there like you can also give the analyst some instructions and
Prompts, yeah, like a
prompts and
system prompt, and you can also give it like you can give it the messages, the four little messages that you can see on Avian, where you can just give the user prompts to actually use. You can give the analyst a prompt and tell it about the user, what its purpose is, and then you can also give prompts for the end user.
So I guess we've seen this sort of like whole field of prompt engineering emerge now. I guess like what have you seen any best practices in terms of people using prompts to get the best results from these models?
Yeah, I think you just have to tell it very clearly what you want. And some people, I guess, like even me, when I use some of these LLMs, I'm quite lazy. So Avian, we do our best to basically build it, and give it a good system prompt so that it can actually give the correct data to the user in a good format. So you'll notice if you use Avian, it'll output everything. It'll output the accounts that are used, the time range. It'll output like a tabular data. You'll be able to like view graphs. So we do our best to have all that data encompassed when they actually receive the data. But in terms of prompt engineering, you just have to very lucidly tell it what you want. And it also, I think, helps to do like step one is give me this, step two is give me this, step three is give me this. But yeah, like you said, prompt engineering is a whole different kind of field. And I think prompt engineering is really good because if you're a great prompt engineer, you can really bypass the whole fine-tuning step, especially if you're not technical enough to fine-tune. Obviously, prompt engineering plus fine-tuning would be the best. But prompt engineering as a whole, you can do a lot with it.
And like in prompt engineering, I've seen people like you'll tell the AI that they are an expert, an expert copywriter, or like you're an expert at, YouTube, or they'll sort of like give the AI a particular role, which I guess then puts the AI into the mindset of somebody who has that kind of expertise. And yeah, it's been interesting to see all of the different prompts that people have tried. Now, I know. So you mentioned some previous companies that you would use to train the schema for Avian, and I saw on LinkedIn you had founded Writerly before
Yeah,
Avian.
correct.
So like, what was the transition from Writerly to Avian, or like I guess how did you make that switch, or what was the change you saw in
Yeah,
the
so there was a
marketplace?
company, there's a company called Salesforce before that, which we sold, and that was where we got the proprietary data sets from. Then after that, we sold that. We were like, okay, we don't want to just quit and do nothing. So the team from that started Writerly, and back then this was pre-GPT. It was like 2022. So we just thought, oh, this GPT API is cool. Why don't we just use it to make a product? So we made a product, and it was quite successful. We decided to sell it within 7 months though, because we thought, first of all, there's no defensibility. Like OpenAI could easily do this, and why wouldn't they if they could make a lot of money doing it? So we wanted to get into a more defensible space, but that was really where we got a lot of our insights from. And also we got into some good programs like the NVIDIA Inception program, where we have access to these like GPUs now that we still use to this day. So there was a lot of advantages to doing that company first, and kind of realizing the pitfalls of the AI space and figuring out how to make it defensible. So we definitely learned a lot from the previous ventures.
So would you say that a sort of AI writing space is fairly commoditized at this point? Because I guess like
Yeah, I
anybody can use
wouldn't.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly correct in saying that. There's nothing defensible about just giving it a prompt and giving it, letting it write. And if that's 90% of your user workflow, it's just more of a feature, right? So we're reaching the point where software is back to dominating the deterministic software side, like having a good product like Notion, all of the front end kind of quirks that it has, plus AI on top is going to be the standard. So the way I position Avian is more of a BI tool where you can ask questions and get answers instead of looking at a bunch of charts first. Obviously, we have the charts as well, but then that's how I position it instead of an AI tool, right? AI is just a feature; it's just a small feature in the product. But the real, kind of technology is being able to connect and blend data from all these different data sources, and then having the BI aspect to it. I think that's how that's going to be the trend. It's going to be you are a company, but you're also an AI enhanced company.
Right. Yeah. It seems like sort of AI is going to be in every software product. Obviously, to some degree, it already is. So, what skills or sort of roles do you think will be valuable in the industry going forward? As I know I've heard of companies where they're trying to train LLMs to be, engineers or, write code or, how would you think about what skills will be valuable in a few years?
I think the main thing is going to be people who know how to use LLMs to complete tasks efficiently and know where to use them, right? They know what the deterministic software code that they have to write is, but they also know where LLMs can excel and they use LLMs within that kind of context. If you even look at like the Google Gemini demo, where they're like, they didn't say Gemini does all this. They have a Python notebook, they have a bunch of code, and then they use Gemini in one function to give the data, right? And then they pass the output from Gemini and they use that to create the graphs that they show in the demo. And that's what it's going to be. The software layer is still going to exist, but it's just going to be enhanced by AI, and the most important roles are the people who know how to use AI well. The prompt engineers non-technically, but also the developers who know where and when to use the large language models.
And would you say what would be the key developer skills that I guess would be difficult to get replaced by an LLM? Because I guess that's the tricky thing is you don't know what the LLMs will be capable of in 18 months. And so I could see it like that is the tricky thing with figuring out what the future will look like. As I understand, like the LMs have gotten fairly good at coding at this point.
Yes, they're fairly good. The more complex things get, the worse the output. Like you can tell it write print in 10 different ways. But for example, let's say you want to use a new feature that's just been released in Next.js 14, right? And it just came out. It won't have any data on that. It won't be able to help you with that. And even if it has data on Next.js, 13, if you ask it about Next.js, it'll give you answers from Next.js 12 because that's most of the training data is 12 and a small percentage is 13, right? So if that makes sense, it's the training data is really not necessarily up to date. So a lot of the outputs that it can give you in terms of coding can be not wrong, but maybe out of date and not best practices. And then I think you have the issue of how it deals with complexity. The more complex things get, and as a developer, if you're good at doing kind of everything, you can do full stack, you can do Python, you can also do AWS. LLM can't compete with that. It can only compete with like a narrow set where you ask it this specific question about, oh, how do I do these like AWS name servers? It's a good unblocker. It's good at writing boilerplate, but it isn't like a replacement for a developer. And I just don't see it being a replacement for developers like for a very long time, like, or if ever. But it can code and it can enhance the development workflow, which is the good thing.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, it's not going to be able to architect whole systems that are
No.
robust um, and would work in the real world without causing lots of damage. So
Yeah,
I could,
yeah.
I could see it's like you need humans to be responsible so that things actually work. And it's perhaps a while before the robots get there. Um, so you said that Avian uses Llama and the sort of open source foundation models, and,
Correct.
and so if you found that those perform better than GPT-4 or Claude, or are you using them because of open source is a better place to build a business?
I feel they perform better, especially where we don't only fine tune it on our proprietary query language, we also fine tune it on a per data source basis. So the results are obviously much better, and you can do also RLHF with it, with like LoRa. So you can actually just make and tune that LLM to output the things that you want. In terms of cost, in terms of speed, it's definitely better. And especially if you're not generating like a bunch of tokens, it ends up being more economical. Sometimes for outputting the data, we can use like a different model. So for example, what we'll do is when we receive the data from our API, the raw data of the table, we can send that to any model we want. So for example, GPT-4 1106, the new model that comes in, if that's just displaying the data, that's fine. It's not really doing like a huge job, and you can replace that or hot swap it with any kind of model that you like. And I feel that's going to be the pattern going forward. You're probably going to have like your core model that does the core business use case, and then if a new model comes out that's better in terms of like displaying the data, you can also use that. So mixing and matching different LLMs, especially stuff like the data verification model, which is also another fine-tuned llama 70b, is going to be very useful. And final note on that is, I think Llama 3 will probably catch up to GPT-4 in most things, and it's also going to be open source. So it's going to be a no-brainer for people with like technical ability to use those models. If you're using GPT-4, the one that provided by OpenAI, and we've done like a bunch of tests on this in terms of latency and stuff like that. I feel like your AI business is definitely going to like fall behind.
So any defensible AI business will have to be able to use a bunch of different models depending on
Correct.
what is performing best. And so would you imagine a future where sort of you have, as you described, sort of like a master model that is trained on your data, and then you're swapping in other LLMs as needed
For
um,
whichever task.
for whichever task is optimal. Um, that is exciting. Certainly exciting if the open source models are better than GPT-4, and the best frontier models are open source models. So that certainly is the most exciting future for everyone.
I think it's going to be more like, when you're coding, you like install different libraries, right? And there's different libraries that do the same thing, like Yarn, NPM, etc. So there's different libraries that do the same thing, but in different ways. And knowing which ones to use and knowing where to use them will really be the thing. I don't think AI technology, especially LLMs, are ever going to be like, like not commoditized. Everybody is going to be using some form of LLM. It's just, again, now back to the software layer and back to the business building layer, and how you can build that enhanced with LLMs.
Right. Yeah. It's however you can get the best results, because that's what's going to win in the marketplace. So besides data analysis, what other AI use cases are you most excited about?
I think the AI use cases are really stuff more to do with being able to understand the world as kind of like we see it. So, for example, the fact that these models are now multimodal, and they can see and they can like listen and they can pass that straight away, I think is one of the most exciting things, because it's new capabilities. We've seen that they can generate images, we've seen that they can generate text, but what other things are they able to do that help them kind of interface and fit in the real world? And I don't know if I'm creative enough to come up with all the ways that you can use them, but I saw this on Reddit the other day. This guy had basically built, he used GPT-4V, and he connected it to like a robot in his room that had like a webcam mounted on it, and then the robot could like move, and then it could also like describe its surroundings. It was pretty cool. Like, and I think that's going to really be like the future, especially of like these cool tech demos that we're going to see.
Yeah, we're gonna have like a C3PO, or I mean that's kind of what you described is basically something like that, of I guess an embodied robot of some kind. Although they still have maybe a ways to go in moving around the physical world is but with computer vision, I guess it's like you have all of the components there. You just need enough people to make it happen or provide some real value. So it's certainly very exciting. What AI tools are you using on a regular basis that you're other
To
than?
be honest, yeah, to be honest, I use Avian, and then sometimes I'll use Bard just to check if it's any good. Maybe sometimes I'll use ChatGPT, but really not often because Avian obviously can do all the coding and all the other stuff that we need it. So I tend to just use Avian. Um, in terms of like other tools that are not specifically AI, I like to use Notion, and then another good one is this it's like a pitch deck builder, like Tome. It's called Tome.app. It's not
Yeah.
really AI enhanced, but it's good. There's one that's really good though, and it's in a completely different industry that we do actually use. Opus Clip. It's really good. It's like it can take like hour-long podcasts and like split them into clips. It is so good. It can also like freeze frame and like split the screen into like 4 different quarters and then show each speaker and then caption each speaker's kind of words below it. Opus Clip is so cool. And that's stuff that I have like we don't have much competence in, like making videos and like editing long form videos. And the fact that AI can actually do that is really cool to me. So that's the stuff that gets me excited. Stuff that we can't do that we can just put into our workflows and we're making videos. I used another one. I maybe don't say the name of it because we use it, but it's one audio generation one. It's really good. They produce really realistic voices, so we use that for some of our voiceovers. And I think that's about it.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening in video with like also like text to video with like Pika Labs is the
Yeah,
very
it's
cool
not
video
quite
with
there yet, but it's like it's getting there, right?
right. Yeah, exactly. You can sort of see where things are going. So let's see. I appreciate your taking the time. I don't know if we could go over um if if people wanted to get started with avian.io. I know you have like a 7-day free trial, I think, on your
Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
And
So Avian obviously has a 7-day trial. We're not like one of these companies that say like book a demo and then you can get our revolutionary thing, but only after you pay 125K per year, right? Most of the Avian features are available for you to try on a trial, and then we do have actual like self-serve plans where you don't have to like talk to anyone. You can just get started with it. Of course, once you're like ready, you can upgrade to like an enterprise plan where you'll be able to fully get the experience of analysts and the other features that we have. But yeah, if you just go on avian.io, you can sign up, add your data sources, and then kind of like get started and analyze your data. We call it experiencing the future of data because that's what we really see it as. Like this is going to be how the new BI tools kind of work. And yeah, that's avian.io.
if you enjoy this, you should sign up to our free newsletter, 3600. In our newsletter, we have valuable content that goes beyond what's available in our videos, links to free tools, resources, and all kinds of awesome stuff. You should head over to our website, join3600.com, to sign up today.